Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a lovely little wrap-up slash reading recommendations video because I had the best autumnal reading season. I didn't read like a ton of books. I think I have what, 6 books to talk about today. So, I'm still a grad student. I'm not a very quick reader. I'm a mood reader. I think that you guys, if you've been subscribed for a while, you've kind of noticed I just don't read as many books as a lot of people on booktube or book talk read, but I have some freaking bangers to talk about. Like, I have some 5 stars. 5 stars to me are like a rare occasion. I get so excited about it. Like, 5 stars fuel me because they don't happen that often. It's almost impossible. So it's like when I get a 5 star, I'm like, holy shit. Like, I just get this high from reading and I'm like, I need more. I need more of these books that just affect me or change my life in such a crazy way, even if it's just in a purely fun way. Like, it doesn't have to be deep, you know what I mean? It's not always super deep. Most of the time though, I guess. I have some autumnal books to talk about. These are kind of the books I read over the course of sort of like late September, all of October, and early November. Now it's Christmas time, as you can see. It's Christmas time. I'm setting up the house a little bit. Just set up my Christmas tree yesterday. Not me. My girlfriend set it up. Actually, I shouldn't take credit for that. One last thing. Did I say my name? My name is Amberly. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining. This is just like my hobby thing. I just love to read and I love to talk about books. And this little community here is like the most precious and beautiful thing ever. And please do leave a comment. Like, tell me what you're reading. Tell me what your hits of the autumn season were. And if you have any kind of seasonal recommendations for Christmas, please let me know because I love Christmas. I've been watching Christmas movies just nonstop since like last week, so I'm super into it, but I'm not exactly sure on Christmas reading yet. I tend not to read, what are Christmas books really? So maybe that's missing from my life. All right, let's just get started in chronological order, and these will all be non-spoilery reviews, by the way. First, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I did talk about this earlier. I had even made a reading vlog with this, but I didn't like it in the end, so I took it off the channel. I'm so sorry. Oh no, not the glare. Should I remove these? But then I can't see. Okay, I'll remove these. I can't really see, but maybe it's better that I can't see myself because then I'll stare at myself the whole time. The Secret History is Donna Tartt's very first novel. This is super highly acclaimed. I'm sure you've read it. And if not, you've definitely heard about it. People call this dark academia or whatever, like the primordial dark academia novel. This, I went in with some expectations for sure about what it was going to be like. I have to say I was a little bit surprised in some ways. For example, it is actually not really like literary fiction. It's very much closer to like a psychological thriller or crime novel. That kind of surprised me because it seems to fit pretty well within that genre. However, the writing is really literary fiction style. I have no mascara on. Choices were made. The writing is incredibly lit-ficky, but the actual like premise of the novel and the pacing, maybe not the pacing so much, it's a little bit slower paced than maybe your average psychological thriller, and it's definitely a little bit deeper because it's trying to make commentary on things that probably a typical genre book in those genres would not really attempt. But it basically follows a young man who transfers from a community college to a very like high-end small liberal arts college on the East Coast. He's from the West Coast, so he's for the first time over there, and he comes from a totally different economic and class background than everybody else, and well, especially the group that he aligns himself with. He becomes kind of quickly fascinated by this group of classics students who all hang out together. They're very tight-knit. They all take classes like one-on-one from this one professor. They're super upper echelon people, and he just becomes kind of completely enamored and intrigued by them and wants to join them. So he starts studying classics alongside them. The book opens with such a chilling page where you find out that one of those people from that group, not your main character, will be murdered at one point by them. And of course you don't know how, but you do know that he is gonna die, and that's really such an interesting choice. I think I got really stuck on that for a while. I watched a bunch of interviews with Donna Tartt after this book because it's incredibly impressive how much tension she's able to create, even though you know as the reader how it's gonna end, kind of like you know who is gonna die and that a murder will be committed. So you already know like the juicy bits a little bit. And yet the book is incredibly filled with tension and just this mystery that keeps you reading. This was honestly chilling. Like the exploration of human nature and like evil and callousness, and just like how people justify their bad actions just was really interesting, and getting it from sort of the outsider's perspective was really also fun. The book is just really clever. There's a lot to it. For example, your main character is an outsider technically from this group, and you only get to know the people in this group through his eyes. And at some point you will kind of feel like, oh, but who are these people? Like, it's so hard to understand some of them and their character traits and how they behave and their psychology. And you sometimes wonder if it's maybe because your narrator is a little bit unreliable. Honestly, this book can be unpacked for hours. It's so interesting. When I finished it, I watched a ton of videos on it. I was just so intrigued. And you know, I can't really give a book like that less than 5 stars. It was really incredible. It was so well written. The mystery was super intriguing. I just couldn't put it down, even when it was quite repetitive in certain parts. Everything seemed very intentional and well executed, and I just really was enthralled by it. The next book I read was actually nonfiction. This is The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. I've spoken about Maggie Nelson a ton on my channel. She has written some of my favorite books. This is one of her more popular books, my gosh, that I actually hadn't read yet. So I finally picked this up and actually read it. This is a sort of memoir. This is a sort of memoir mixed kind of, she's always writing these things that are kind of genre defying. They're always nonfiction, but they're often like similar to like cultural critiques plus a little bit of like philosophy plus just like essay style opinion pieces, but she's always quoting other scholars. She's not a scholar, I guess. Would she be anyway, I don't know, but she's always quoting like really famous scholars or books. She's doing like a lot of research for her takes, if that makes any sense. The Argonauts specifically is kind of her meditations on motherhood, queerness, and womanhood. It's a lot about her trans partner, about her pregnancy, and just kind of meditations on motherhood in a way that I don't think is very common. One thing about Maggie Nelson is she's refreshingly honest. She sometimes writes really vile things that are very surprising, that just kind of come at you out of nowhere, but she's so honest and like so unafraid to be honest. And she's also just so gifted in writing. She's an incredible writer. I'm just constantly in awe of her. So the prose, or I guess not prose, but the writing style was really great, and I really enjoyed some of the ideas that she puts forth that definitely challenged my own. One thing for me, I gave this 4 stars. It wasn't my favorite Maggie Nelson. I kind of understood why she would want to link the whole discussions on queerness and motherhood and womanhood together. However, in the end, for me, it felt a little bit underdeveloped on all sides, on all fronts. I would have preferred one book about queerness, one book about motherhood. Maybe, you know, I guess they would definitely like kind of converge at one point or another. But I did think it was a little bit too short and certain things were really underdeveloped. But this book made me cry, and I didn't expect that. So it was really sentimental in the end. I really enjoyed it. Next book I read, I don't have a physical copy of, Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This was a really lovely like break from all the other kinds of reading I was doing. Technically, I started this book months ago, but I put it down because I wasn't in the mood for it anymore. I'm a mood reader in the worst way. So anyways, I just picked it right back up, and I just wanted to see how the story ended. So this was the first book in a trilogy following a young woman called Delilah Green, who's an artist in New York City, and her stepsister is getting married, and she's kind of forced to attend, but she has a very contentious and difficult relationship with her stepsister and her stepmother after her father passed away. But she's going back to her hometown, whatever. Basically, the romance that blooms or blossoms is between her and one of her stepsister's best friends from high school. So she has like memories of this girl from when she was in high school, and she kind of perceives that whole friend group, including her stepsister, as just mean girls. And she kind of starts this thing with this girl, Claire, I think was her name. It's honestly a little bit too long of a book is the reason I gave it, I think, 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but it was like really comforting and just a lovely little break. I enjoyed the relationship between the 2 main characters. I enjoyed other things as well. For example, it includes like a wider cast of characters, so it wasn't just exclusively the romance. But not gonna lie, maybe I would have preferred there to be a little bit more focus on the romance itself and a little less on all the extra storylines, all the extra cast of characters. For example, Claire is, so the other main love interest, she is a single mother. She had a child when she was like a teenager or something like that. So it's many years later, her daughter is older, but there's a lot of her story with like her ex-baby daddy and like all this extra stuff. And I wasn't a huge fan of that. It's not super romantic to me to have that kind of thing included in so much detail. However, the vibes of this place, this town called Bright Falls, where they all live, is just super comfy, cozy, small town vibes. I really enjoyed that. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I think, like I said, it wasn't my favorite. I thought it was too long, but it was just kind of a nice little refresher, and I am willing to give it another shot because there's not that many sapphic romance novels out there, and this one is a trilogy, so I bought the second book as well. I will be reading that eventually. Next up, I read Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. This is a Polish sci-fi classic, kind of considered one of the more seminal works in sci-fi in general. This was phenomenal. I could not put it down. It was like the most binge-worthy read ever. It's a perfect blend of that kind of, what did I call it? Like pop sci-fi? No, that's not the word I used in my review. Let me see. It was the perfectly pulpy and speculative fiction kind of blend. So it was like pulpy sci-fi on one hand, and on the other hand, it had a lot of things to say about human knowledge, human rationality, epistemology, like the limits of the human mind, and kind of commentary on science as a whole. It was like deep, but also pulpy as fuck. Like the dialogue was very funny at times, kind of ridiculous. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a perfect blend. I really, really loved it. This book follows a man, Kelvin, who goes down to this space station on this planet Solaris in this future, I guess maybe near future, where we've discovered this planet called Solaris, and it has very strange properties that just don't align with anything that we understand about how evolution works, how life develops, how planets can even be. The planet is very peculiar. It's covered by this ocean, but it's not water. Like, it's not ocean water. It's like this more like thick substance. There's no like oxygen on the planet or anything like that, but it is covered by this ocean thing. They call it ocean, I think. Anyway, you're in the perspective of this guy who goes down to the space station. There's 3 other scientists currently stationed there. The mission has kind of run dry. It's been years of doing research on this planet with almost like no real data or no real results yielded. So the understanding of what's going on there has just kind of run dry. And so he gets on there. As soon as he arrives, something really freaking weird is going on. I found certain parts of this so psychologically horror-y. I was just really freaked out for like the first half maybe, and then it wasn't as scary, but it was super fun. Like, I love that it was a little bit scary. But let's just say that early on and immediately, it seems that the planet is kind of sending people, things, beings into the space station. Like, it seems to know that they're there, and it seems to know them very well, and then it sends some people up there for whatever purpose or whatever. Maybe more in the second half of the book, but there's a lot of like scientific background on like the literature that has been produced over Solaris, like what theorists have been theorizing for like the last 100 years or something like that. So the body of knowledge, not really knowledge, but the body of like theories on what Solaris is, how it could have come to be, and all that kind of stuff is super intricate and detailed. And there's a lot of documents, and you as a reader get to kind of read those things. I know for a lot of people that was super boring, but for me that was super interesting. I loved that part. I loved how believable it was. It felt like Solaris was real, and that this like scholarship on Solaris was sincere and real. It just made it so much more immersive to me. I loved it because it gave a lot of commentary on like science and progress. Loved it. 5 stars. I loved this book. The next thing I read was actually a short story. This was The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I was in the library on Halloween. I had finals, so I could not really celebrate Halloween. And I was like, you know what? As a study break, let me read something a little bit spooky so I can get into the vibes. I'm not really a Halloween person. I'm a Christmas person, and I find that you can rarely be both, right? But I really just wanted to kind of get in the spooky season a little bit, so I read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I gave this 4 stars. It was really good. It was interesting. I think it's the first thing she ever published, and it has a real it had a really big effect on its readers. It was published, I think, in New Yorker magazine first, and it really just outraged people. People were like, not outraged, but people were like shocked and like, what does it mean kind of thing. So there's like a lot of interesting pop culture-y kind of history behind this story. As with most short stories, I just found it to be too short. I just find short stories too short, generally speaking, to really be that great. It was interesting. I think it's not that interesting in this time period that we're living in. And I can imagine that like the shock of it was much larger when it was first published. But I liked it. And last but not least, I read Authority by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the second book in the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. So the first book being Annihilation. I've spoken about it on my channel a lot. I really, really loved Annihilation. It's one of my favorite books. And I had been putting off reading Authority for so long because many people said it was like too slow, too bureaucratic, too whatever. Girl, I fucking loved it. I thought it was honestly more disturbing than the first book. It really got in my head. It was just so phenomenally executed. And I think, honestly, my opinion, this is so controversial. I think if you understand the kind of story that Jeff Vandermeer wants to tell, even in Annihilation already, if you liked Annihilation for those reasons, you will love Authority as well. Like, this was so necessary. So the first book in Annihilation takes place inside of Area X. I'm just gonna give you like a brief summary. It's like this strange anomaly thing, like this place is kind of sectioned off a bit, but has some weird things going on. I can't really imagine how to describe it. It's just this like contained area that the government is monitoring for very strange activity. And for just 30 years, maybe, they've been sending expeditions in to try to investigate what is this Area X, like, where did it come from? Is it expanding? You know, they don't really know much about it. So the first novel, you are in Area X on an expedition. You follow like four main characters, not main characters. You follow one main character. She's your narrator, and they're there with like three other women, I believe. So it's like a four-person team. They're in Area X. You kind of get to feel and experience firsthand how strange that place is and the effect it has on people. And it's just a complete mystery. It's totally a complete mystery. And the first book is super immersive, super atmospheric, very exciting, very thrilling, very disturbing and everything, like, but you're there, right? So you have this like first person experience almost. This book takes place in the government agency that's just outside of Area X. This is the government agency that is like sending in the expeditions, right? So no spoilers for the first book or the second book. I'll just tell you what this book is about. I can't tell you that without spoiling the first book. So essentially, this book follows a young man called Control who gets stationed in Southern Reach, which is the government agency right outside of Area X. He gets sent on like a special mission essentially to kind of assess what's going on in that agency, because similarly to Solaris, there's a lot of like non-progress being made. It's been years and they're not really figuring anything out about Area X. There have been some serious disasters and failures, and Control is basically sent in as a fixer. Like, identify, diagnose the problem with this agency, try to solve it. From his perspective, you kind of get like a fresh take on Area X. Like, you get to learn about Area X almost all over again, but with other types of information that you didn't have in the first book, because the clearance level of Control is much higher than anyone who was in Area X in the first book. So you're getting like fresh information that you didn't know before, but also information that you did already know about. He just wants to do things like the right way, and he wants to like sort through all the documents and all the things that maybe bureaucratically haven't gone so well, and he wants to fix it essentially. And you kind of see him slowly fail at doing so and just kind of be a little bit taken over by the mystery of Area X a little bit and see how it affects him. This was so haunting to me. Like, this has a lot of reveals about Area X that you don't find out in the first book that are quite shocking. I was honestly on the edge of my seat like all the time. I thought this was so chilling how it got under my skin. I was just addicted to reading it. I needed to keep reading. I needed to find out more. This did not disappoint in any kind of way. I freaking loved it. Maybe even more than the first book. Honestly, full on 5 stars. This was phenomenal. The tension, the feeling that something's wrong was so well done and perfectly executed. I was gagged. I was gagged during this book, like many times. So I freaking loved it. I loved finding out more about Area X from like the bureaucratic side, like stuff that you didn't know in the first book, stuff that like the government knows but nobody else knows kind of thing. That was so intriguing to me. This was crazy. This was insane. I freaking loved it. So yeah, that was about it for my autumn reads. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys got some recommendations from this video, perhaps. And maybe you can leave in a comment down below what your favorite autumn reads were, because I had some really good reads. I had like 3 5-star books. That never happens to me. I was so happy.